What conclusions did you reach about collaboration? So maybe you're super easy, challenging, super easy, great, okay? I hope somebody's taking good notes. Yeah, super easy.
So we talked sort of at two different levels. One sort of one of the primary levels of thinking of data collaboration was at more of that state higher ed institution system, as well as federal agency, federal data like FAFSA, and workforce data either within the state, the unemployment insurance, or there's some federal unemployment you can do. And then those are some of the primary ones. We then spent a little bit of time talking about like Department of Health and Human Services, Family and Children Services, both rehab, and the idea that they might not be fully plugged into whatever data collaboration we created at the beginning, but having them at the table is really important, because if you start to think about how you're going to match and build a system and they don't plug in easily, you might make a decision that's hard to undo later on. So they're included there. And then why we sort of focused at this level, data sharing and linking, including the definitions. You can have some shared research questions and all sort of build them together. High-level analytics and high-level policy changes, including data policy and governance. But then within that, this is sort of on that data side of the collaboration. But we also thought it was really important to start to think about that sort of district level. And the idea in the data, the SBA gets from the above. So the districts and that data, and then their partnerships with local and community organizations and local higher ed institutions. And that was really where a lot of the intervention development and implementation occurs. And so to develop some of those collaborations at the local level helps inform that. They do a lot of the progress monitoring, and they can evaluate their impact. We note a lot of this state level thing. The difficulty really depends on existing state structures. We'll talk about some differences across the different states, which might make it easier or harder for those institutions to share. And challenges down here. Data differences?
Data changes, making data changes, resource technical capacity, system improvement.
But we did talk about that. Just because you can link data doesn't mean that it's comparable. That you have to do some crosswalking with the definitions. And that's.
And how long would it take to get all of this up and running if you were starting from scratch?
10 or 20 years.
6 months.
We talked about like a lot of this, it takes investment behind it. Like if I think within Massachusetts and the partnerships that K-12 education has made with higher ed and with workforce, and even the way in which we produce reports related to FAFSA, we used our state longitudinal data system grants to fund that work. That sort of we had an influx of additional funding and then accountability to do that work that helped sort of spark it. It wasn't that people weren't bought in, but you need some of that additional investment because the pie's already overtaxed.
And you need long-term maintenance funding too, or otherwise it's going to go.
Yeah.
And what are some of the hurdles? People, and more people.
Yeah, because we talked about the state structures, but also relationships can really help spark it or help hinder it.
I know, just looking from the outside, you know, if a key person changes in a district, I get to start all over again. I don't have any state behind me saying, you need to do this. I just have to go figure it out. And that can take a long time. Much longer than sometimes I think is worth it. But I wouldn't say that out loud. How about this group in the back? Group 4.
So we came up with a framework more so than answering individual questions.
Okay.
So we kind of established what are the lanes. So we kind of started with this why, what, how. What are the lanes? And we came up with K-12, higher ed, kind of ed tech, as in, whether it's an SIS system or assessment or tracking system, just what is data technology to support that. And then kind of state level or publicly available data like workforce, Department of Commerce, so forth. That's the fourth one. And where we landed on is for there to be kind of optimal collaboration, hurdle clearing, and this iterative design process, that we needed each of these teams to have each of these kind of team players and archetypes, if you will, where we said, we need kind of representing each of these lanes, folks who inform the policy, evangelists or first adopters, data analysts and developers, and project management at a really tight level, kind of representative of each of these. So kind of like a matrix, 4 lanes and 4 players. And really, we landed on this final point of, really planning for these archetypes to not only get the strategy right, but also the kind of the operational, functional execution right. And so we kind of took like almost a matrix approach of those questions. And I don't know if the team wants to add anything to this.
Very pragmatic.
We were a little bit too scary pragmatic.
And how long would it take you to build a system?
I think that depends on what the answers are to what, how, and why. I think the what, how, and why drives everything else about the rest of this. If you know what questions you're trying to answer and the scope of what you want to do, and why you're going to do it, how you're going to present that value out to your believers and your non-believers, then the next step is putting the people in the right people in the right place at the right time to determine the how. And then the rest should follow along after that, right? You should be able to define your key milestones appropriately based off of the scope of what you're trying to do. If you're going to build a state LDS from scratch that's going to cover everything, you're going to be doing that for decades. But if you're looking at 1 or 2 measures over the next 2 to 3 academic cycles, that might be more manageable, and therefore you might be able to stand something up within 6 to 8 months or a year, or depending upon what type of buy-in you have from your stakeholders.
Yeah. But I would just also add that, this would be kind of all 4 lanes. I'm just thinking about, I think each of us have had opportunities where we've partnered, we're a K-12 organization that partnered with an ed tech or partnered with a higher ed institution, and it's almost, you need kind of phase 1, policy and kind of evangelists, first adopters. You need the superintendent or the president of the university system to agree, and then that agreement has to then transcend the folks below them to actually do the design of the work, implementation and execution of the work. And I think where it falls short is, it either falls short on this end or this end in most, even just binary kind of partnership agreements.
Is there agreement on that around the world? You need a champion, basically, who's going to say yes, who's in the authority position, so that when they say yes, it's me. Is that the bottom line?
Or you need 4 people in each lane to say yes. Or you need an evangelist or a policymaker in each lane that agree on a particular standard or a direction.
How about this group? What do you got? Which one? Everybody's crying, everybody else.
So we started with who are the people that you would have to have for this network to work. And it was interesting because we were going to do to be decided whether how large their role was or were they essential to the collaboration. But we really, at the end, we kind of came back to this community at large piece, that it's really important that there be a broad acceptance of what you're trying to do, because if you don't have that, it can really backfire. They talked about some initiatives that seats in the policy. Do you
I just don't want to call out of it.
Colorado, yeah. But anyway, so of course you have to have the administrators, the teachers, the counselors, whoever's providing you either both your guidance software system and your student management system. The school board, if they're elected, if your mayor and your workforce development people are on board, your school board is appointed by the mayor, the governor, you're probably okay. State education agency, and then parents and students. And then these are the ones that we identified as potentially very important: social service agencies, local tech companies, or companies whose workforce depends on students having the skill set, education, nonprofits, colleges of education, and agencies that work with refugees. And then some questions that we just were posing: how do groups plug into your network? Because some groups can be impactful, but maybe they're small and they can't impact an entire district, but they can be helpful in your work. So, how do groups plug in? And then where are the assets, or where's the surplus of support in your community that can help be a champion for the work? Because to their point of having an evangelist, it definitely is going to take someone or a lot of someone's dedicating a lot of time to make this kind of thing work.
Let me ask this, suppose I start with a narrow question. I'm wondering if that, what I've heard so far, 3 to 6 years, basically, it seems to me, in terms of time to get something up and running?
Depends on the funding.
Depends on the funding. That is a key thing. Are there people who can be funded to do the work? But even then, at least, and I'm throwing this out as a question, although I might state it as a statement, how long does it take to get people around the table to agree? Everybody agrees, you look, the country decided it needed to raise its high school graduation rate basically 30 or 40 years ago. Longer than that, in fact. There was a publication in Nation at Risk in 1983. It really didn't start working until the last 10 years, if you will. And there are plenty of people who will say it's not working yet, basically, because the graduates aren't ready for the workforce or post-secondary. So I want to again throw out that question: kind of what magnitude should you aim for in the beginning? What is feasible and practical? If a high school says, or a college says, we're not getting kids the caliber we want, who do they give that feedback to? And I think you can think, for those of you from California, the Cal State universities have eliminated remedial classes here. How long did it take to get there? Charlie?
I think that they were going to try and do that, and they I don't know that they actually ended up executing it. I think that they thought that, they said, no, wait, one more year.
I think actually they finally did it.
Oh, they did?
But they did, the first time around, yes, they said no. People said, we want that, and then they backed off, because the Cal States said, no, not yet.
What are you going to do with it?
Yes, so that,
A long time.
as we talk about spreading the idea of pathways to adult success, we're very much talking about biting off something we can chew. At least this is my feeling. And we can have a vision of where we want to go eventually, but trying to, I'm asking this as a question again. Is it realistic to start trying to implement the vision right away, or do you start smaller?
Well, I personally think you should start with higher ed, and start with something small, and get a quick win, of a model that works for that particular thing. And that's something that other people can take and work with and modify, grow, or whatever. But there's one, really good example of that having occurred, then that would help, everybody else. But if everybody's just starting on a blank sheet of paper, come up with a lot of really different stuff, you know? I mean, that's what you want, fine, but if, you know, if you want to do something quick and fast, you know, and meaningful, I think that would be really hard.
The last group, number 2, what are your thoughts here?
I know, we're all like, I would say that, you know, we had some, kind of different ideas about where to start with this stuff. You know, I think the secondary to post-secondary that's been brought up a lot is interesting. And I think that with the, to Joanna's point about, you know, we've raised graduation rates, but are kids ready for the rigors of college? I think that sharing some of this data back is a very important way to start answering those questions, is to start maybe identifying certain maybe course taking patterns or other things that are happening in high school that are leading to kids graduating, but not really being ready for college. So I mean, I do think that, to me, that seems like a critical one to kind of start with, to start to understand some of this information. But then social services as well. You know, I've done some experience in that, but I'm not to speak to the social service.
I was thinking that, agreement with whoever said to start small and agree with a few 3 to 5 key indicators at the bigger global level, like when you're talking about higher ed and you're talking about employment and what's successful and what could a team, cross-sector team, come up with and say, these are the 3 to 5 things we want to measure because we think they will drive success in college and career. And then back that down to the school and community level and say, based on these 3 to 5 indicators, what are 3 to 4 or 5 indicators that your school district could use to drive this? So we're all pushing towards the same thing. And I think that type work would take about a year and a half to come up with 3 to 5 indicators, and then put a measurement system in place, and then spend some time saying it's okay because we're going to do feedback loops. We're going to keep tweaking this and making it stronger and better. And we may have to go off course a little because guess what, we did miss it. But if we're having those indicators, however, I think it can't just rest with the college university system. This is where the state and the legislature comes in because those feedback loops actually have to go back to those head policy makers in the state, so that way we can enable all of this work. And I think we spoke about that. Where's social services? So they probably could fit at the state level where you got to talk with the Department of Ed and the Department of Health and Human Services, having that stakeholder conversation based on what's happening at the community service level, which is schools, and what needs to happen. So I'll give you an example, Medicaid to school. Nationally, there's called the Free Care Initiative, which allows states to get back Medicaid reimbursement at the school level for any child who's on Medicaid. That's national. And New Hampshire had a barrier to that, which required you to have an IEP. So I worked with the state legislature to change that law in our state. And so now schools have the option for those. But if we had just left it at state, we didn't have those conversations with the schools, we wouldn't have even known that this was causing that much of a barrier. And then having that conversation with the feds at that time saying, oh, we didn't know in New Hampshire that there was the Free Care Initiative. Somehow we lost that information along the way. People change jobs, those type things. But so you have to have these groups and everyone driving towards the same. Even if the indicators aren't right to begin with, it's okay to backtrack.
So it's a shared vision or goal, whatever you call it. It's leadership. It's communication. I mean, I think I've heard that in every group. Lots and lots of conversations. I know. Be needed to get where you need to go. And it will probably take quite a while to get there. I mean, a year and a half is on the scale of things short is what we're talking about.
To start.
To start, that's not to finish. And along the way, you pick out some indicators that are measurable and actionable, and you learn by doing.
Maybe that's a really important tactical piece that I think you guys might be able to help with, which is when you're doing these data sharing agreements, one of the things that constantly is getting pushed back and forth is who owns the risk of this data sharing agreement, right? Like, hey, no, if this data breach, no, you have to own it, no, you have to own it, right? And like, this is like a really, like a major thing, and I think that trying to figure out some models in some ways to help like figure out, okay, how can we sort of like share this risk and how can we sort of like, bear this is critical to like making some of this a little bit, smoother. And I'm sure that this is a conversation almost everybody in this room has probably had to tangentially take part in.
And that also might form an argument in favor of this kind of approach of having sort of a web of interconnected co-owners and stakeholders that are sort of distributed across the different organizations sharing data. Because they kind of create the urgency and like the permission structure for somebody to finally like say yes, right? For people to stop being just like pure gatekeepers and saying like, I have this whole kind of web of people in different organizations who are sort of relying on this exchange to happen. So it makes it harder to throw up barriers and say, no, we can't do this because.
So it's getting a critical mass of the right people on the bus and talking. Yeah. Okay, how about we take a brief break?